Today, we are going to be talking about plot, and it is important to keep in mind that plot is the action that happens in a story. It is made up of five things: the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. The first part of the story, the exposition, is basically the beginning of the story. It's usually the first couple of chapters or the first part of a movie, and it tells you where it's taking place or where it initially is taking place, the characters that are going to be involved, and the inciting conflict, the first conflict that sets up the rest of the story. Keep in mind that the setting is where and when the story is taking place. So, is it taking place in the afternoon on a cloudy day in a green field surrounded by sheep? Or is it taking place near a mountain that is by a lake with the northern lights shining in the sky? Or is it taking place in a pineapple under the sea? It could be anywhere. The next thing we want to keep in mind are our characters. And our characters are who the story starts off with. It might not be all the characters are in the story. Some people might come in, some people might leave, but it's who we are starting the story with. So is it going to be this guy? Is it going to be these two women? Is it going to be this bunny and this fox? Who are your characters? Finally, in the exposition, we have our conflict. And the conflict is the problem that happens in the story. Now, this is the inciting conflict. It is the first problem. There could be several problems that happen throughout the story, but this is the first one that kind of sets everything else in motion. So it could be something like maybe you're having a fight with your dad, or maybe a bunch of turtles move into your neighborhood throwing hammers and you have to hit them with fireballs. Or maybe you're a boy with a magic dog who's still feeling sad about it. The next part of plot is the rising action. The rising action is the largest part of the story, and it furthers the conflict. It's all the stuff that kind of gets you to that turning point. Think of it like an escalator. You're moving up the escalator slowly but surely until you reach that top, which is the climax. The climax is where the main conflict, that initial conflict, gets resolved or leads to a resolution. It is the highest point of the story. Let's use the movie Finding Nemo as an example for rising action and climax. At the beginning of the movie Finding Nemo in the exposition, the inciting conflict is that Marlin does not trust his son. Nemo wants to be able to go out and live his life, but Marlin is very fearful and doesn't allow his son to do this. This pushes Nemo away to the point where Nemo becomes captured and Marlin has to go find him. Eventually, the two are reunited in the climax when Marlin finally sets aside his fear and lets his son be the person that he knows that he is. However, everything in between that gets us to that point is the rising action. So, when Marlin and his new friend Dory have a run in with a bunch of sharks, that's rising action. When they barely escape the jellyfish forest, that's rising action. When they're met by a whale and swallowed, that's rising action. When a pelican offers them help to escape the seagulls in the Find Nemo, that's rising action. All of these things get us closer to Nemo and Marlin being reunited and Marlin accepting his son for who he is. The next part of plot is the falling action and the resolution. The falling action helps to wind down the story so it doesn't just end abruptly with the climax. And it lets us see kind of how the characters are living after that conflict is resolved. And so for the falling action, it's when Nemo is happy with his father and they're living in the coral reef. This is also really close to the resolution, which is the end of the story. And that's when Marlin has finally reconciled with his son, they're living happily, and we can see that all is well in their world. As an example of what this would look like in action, we're going to be taking a look at the Pixar animated short, Presto. And we're going to be looking for the parts of plot. The first part we're going to be looking for is the exposition. Now, if you noticed, the setting of this exposition seems to be a theater. He is a magician, he is performing a show, and so it is taking place in a theater. The two characters that we seem to meet are Presto the magician and his assistant Alex. The inciting conflict seems to be that Presto has already eaten, but Alex hasn't, and he's starving. He really wants that carrot, and he won't perform until Presto provides it for him. This is the basis of the rest of the story. All of those things that came right before this were rising action. They led us to this point, whether it was getting electrified, whether it was getting hit with a ladder, whether it was getting your hand smashed or an egg in the face. All of this created tension between the two characters that is leading to the climax and the change in it. And we've gotten to this point. The magician is up high in the theater. He's in danger. The rabbit thinks he's won. And that's the end of our rising action. We're now getting into our climax. What you just saw was the climax because it is a change in the conflict. Remember that the inciting incident, the inciting conflict, the first one was that they were disagreeing, that they were upset with each other. The magician wanted to do the show, Alex wanted to eat a carrot. They were not coming together, and that's what caused all that violence in the first place. But here, even though Alex has won and can walk off and go get a carrot, he decides to save the magician, even though the magician has been kind of mean to him. This is a fundamental change in their relationship, a fundamental change in the conflict, which is why it is the climax. So now we come to the falling action and the resolution. The falling action is occurring when Presto the magician realizes what Alec did for him and that he should change. And so he gives him a carrot and they become friends again. The resolution, as you can see by the poster board, is that they are now on equal footing. They treat each other with respect, and that's where we have ended our story. To finish up, keep in mind that plot is the action that occurs in the story. It involves the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. If you need more help with this, you can also check the class dictionary where there are written explanations of these as well. If you're still having questions, please make sure you're asking in class so that I can help you better understand. Thank you.